Hey guys, welcome back. Matthew Kelly here, and welcome to my first vlog. I am kind of excited and, well, I won't say I'm nervous about this, but it's just a little different for me. Standing, holding the camera instead of having it on a tripod and talking to you guys and not necessarily talking about what I'm making on the wheel and all those kind of things. Welcome to the back of my shop, to my kiln shed. And I want to talk about a few things out here and talk about some things that happened recently and also some exciting news coming up this year. I guess first off, if you guys don't know, I've been making pottery for about 25 years. Most of that time I spent working for like other potters as like a journeyman potter, where I go and make work for them. They finish it and sell it as their own work. And I still do a fair amount of that today because I have a wife and 3 kids. You know, my wife is actually stay-at-home mom, and she homeschools the 2 older ones. And so I have to keep bills paid while I'm still venturing into making my own line of pottery. And so I opted to continue to work as a journeyman potter, helping out these other potters. I live in a community where there's a few potters that actually can sell more work than they can really produce on their own. So I've just taken the skills that I've developed over years and go and help them. So I guess about 5 years ago, I started on this adventure of making my own line of work, and I got into wood firing with a friend of mine, Joseph Sand, and so that's been a great time, great experience, and I still actually work with him, and he fires his kiln 3 times a year, and so I'll make work and go help him load and fire and unload his kiln, and for kind of like a barter in my time and energy in helping him, I get to put pieces in his kiln, and I usually get a fair amount of pieces in his kiln. He has a very large kiln. That's been a really great opportunity for me, and I've learned a whole ton from working with him. And this whole time I've kind of been working on plans for my own wood-fired kiln, wood-fired salt glaze kiln, and in the meantime I also purchased a gas kiln. And so I have that I've been working with and really enjoyed having that. Today, what I'd really like to show you is show you the beginnings of my wood kiln, show you what I've got done so far, and this is over like a couple years period of time. I started out by attempting a Kickstarter program. I set a pretty high goal, which I probably could have done it for less looking back. And so my goal was a little bit higher than it should have been, I think, and so my campaign was not successful. But then I also had some great people that had donated or had pledged towards the campaign. I sent out a letter or an email to all of them and said, hey, I'm still going to build this kiln even though my Kickstarter wasn't successful. So if you guys want to donate, I will still honor the pledge that you guys made and the reward that you will get once this project is finished. Those people have been very generous. Some of them have already received their reward in return, and some of them actually wanted to wait until the pots came out of my first ever firing. And so I've still got those people on a list. And so if you're watching this and you're one of those people, I have not forgotten you, and I'm so thankful for your support. And you really have helped jumpstart my progress on this. We're going to transition. I'm going to show you guys some things, show you what I've got started on my wood kiln, and show you where things are going, what my plans are, and then talk about some changes that are coming this year. All right, here we go. This is, as I said, this is my wood kiln, the beginnings of it. What I have here is the front section here. This is actually going to be all firebox. This is where all the fire and all the heat most of the heat will come from. You can see that it's kind of lower than there's a raised part back up here. So this whole lower part here is going to be firebox. The door is going to be that full width that you see there. I think I planned it out to be like a 3-foot wide opening. That door will go all the way up, and it'll kind of make an arch up on top. But these walls, straight wall is going to go probably about 4 foot above this level that you see right here. We're going to have about 4 foot of straight wall that's going to come up, and then on both sides, and then there's going to be an arch that will cover over the top. So if I back up again, you can kind of see what's going to be happening here is that the whole kiln is going to kind of come up straight on each side, and then there'll be an arch across the top, and it'll be straight down on this side as well. The door will be completely open on the front until we get all the pots loaded. All the pots will be loaded on this elevated part right back here. You'll be able to see, I'll show you in a second, right back there, that's the very back wall of the chimney. Well, in front of that, about 2 feet in front of that, there's actually going to be another wall that'll actually be the back of the actual kiln and kind of the front of the chimney. So that will go up the full height of the whole kiln as well. And so we'll start by loading the pots in that very back part there, closest to the back wall of the kiln or front wall of the chimney. We'll make stacks of pots with shelves and posts, and then we'll put 3 independent stacks in that kiln there, spaced out probably about a foot in between each stack. And the reason we do that partially is because there'll be holes in the side of the kiln as well that during the fire we'll be able to actually put small sticks of wood that will come in the side in between the stacks of pots to kind of help carry the heat that's in the firebox down here as we're reaching the temperature we want in the front. We'll start putting wood in the sides to help propel that here, move that heat towards the back of the kiln as well. So you can kind of see what I've done on the base of it here. And so I came back, I've got cinder block. I've got 2 layers of cinder block here that elevate the spot where all the pots are going to be sitting. So I've done a couple layers of cinder block, and then I have a layer of concrete board, and then I have a layer of soft brick, and then I have the floor of the kiln. And so actually it's the same thing up here minus the cinder block. I've got concrete board, I've got soft brick, and then I've got the floor of the kiln. And so the floor of the kiln is made out of these really large high fire heavy duty tiles here. And then the straight wall of the kiln is actually going to be all made out of these 6x9 bricks. They're actually like a number 1 arch brick is what they're numbered as. So you can see if I bend down here, you might be able to notice how like they're actually like, see that one, there's actually like an angle there. So actually this one's wider on this end than it is this end, but this one is the exact inverse of that, so that you end up by putting the two together, we get a level surface. So I'm actually doing all the straight wall. I've got enough of these brick here, these 6x9 solid number 1 arches to do all of the straight wall of the whole kiln. So that's actually going to go all the way back. And as I said, you can see right here where it transitions from that 9-inch thick wall there to the 4.5-inch regular standard fire brick here. So the back wall of the kiln is actually going to be right down this spot right here. So that's going to be the back wall of the kiln. It's going to be 9 inches thick as well. And then the back wall of the chimney only needs to be this 4.5 inches thick, because once the heat gets to this part anyways, you're not trying to get anything more out of that heat anyways. Most of that heat is just going to go straight up the chimney and out the top there. And the whole width of the chimney will be the same width as the kiln down here until it gets above the arch of the kiln, and then it will taper down to like a 3 brick by 3 brick square chimney, and that will go. So the whole kiln is going to be about 20 foot long, and the whole chimney will be probably 20 to 25 foot tall. And so now I'm going to cover some of the exciting things coming up this year. All right, so here's what's happening. Have you guys ever had like an expectation of something that you expected? You know, you kind of made plans for something, and then you know, things just don't go the way you plan. Of course you have. All of us have. All of us do. And this doesn't necessarily exactly pertain to the kiln, but it's the reason I'm talking about the wood kiln right now. The wood kiln has been a big part of my plans for the last 4, 5, 6 years, because what I want to do eventually with my work is I want to predominantly do, you know, work for a season at a time, 2, 3, 4 months, make a body of work, fire my wood kiln, and then have a kiln opening sale here on my property for 1 or 2 weekends, and you know, still do a couple, you know, craft shows throughout the year, but have my, you know, main body of my work and the main source of my income come from what I'm doing in my wood kiln here. So that's what I'm talking about here, as far as, you know, what I've been planning on, what I want to do with this kiln. And I had a pretty major thing that just kind of, well, it was major to me. It hit me this past week. I got an email about something that just wasn't going to happen this year like I thought it was. And it was just upsetting, because it was like, man, that was a big part of my sales last year. It was a big part of my income. And I was just kind of bummed about it for the first little bit. And between a couple conversations I had, and then the very next day, man, I was listening to a podcast, and the guy brought up a video of a podcast of a guy who's a Navy SEAL, and he started talking about, man, when things just don't go the way you want them to, how do you react? And he was talking about how when he was a commander of Navy SEALs, and that anytime one of the guys in his command would come to him and say, "Hey, man, we just, this fell through, or this is not going to happen, or this is not going right," he'd say, "Good," and that's all he would say. And one of his guys finally, after quite a while of this happening, came to him and he said, "Man," he said, "I've got this issue, and this problem," he said, but I know what you're going to say when I tell you." And the guy said, "Well, what do you mean you know what I'm going to say?" He said, "Well, you're going to say good." And he said, "Well, yeah, I am." He said, "You know why I say good? Is because in every bad thing that happens to us, there's the opportunity for something good to happen." And man, this is like the very next day after I get this news. I just, I don't mope around that much. I'm a pretty positive guy. But things hit you, and it just changes your disposition. It changes your mindset. And so I had this happen, and then the very next day, not even 24 hours later, I hear this like 2.5-minute video that just rocks my world, and it just says, "You know what? You got bad news. Good. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to change in your life? What are you going to do? What are you going to, you were planning on X, Y, and Z, or you're playing a sport and your ankle got sprained. Good. Now you got time to do something else because you're not going to be playing as hard. Now you got time to work on this or work on that. Your business deal fell through. Good. Now's a chance to find another one." And so, you know what? I was the same night that I got the news, I was talking to Cam, the guy that's been helping me, and I told him, I said, "Man, this show's just not going to happen this year." And he said, "So what are you going to do about it?" And I said, "Well, what I ought to do is finish building my kiln and have a kiln opening sale the same time, or the same general time frame that show was going to happen." And he's like, "Well, why don't you do it?" And I'm like, "Well, that's like 7 months from now, and I've got a lot of work to do between now and then to make that happen." So just through the series of events that happened, and that video, and just personally not having I don't have a quitter's mindset. I'm going to make things happen. But at times, I've learned, I've set really high and lofty goals in the past and just kind of been slightly disappointed or just not hit those goals. So I've kind of, especially with building this kiln and this whole project, I've kind of learned to be like, "Hey, man, I got to be a little bit more realistic so I don't continually get let down and get upset." And I need to, it just takes time, and a lot of times it takes longer to do things than we initially think. So, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. We're having a kiln opening here in my property sometime in September. I'm not setting a date yet, but over the next few months, we're going to get to work real hard, finish this kiln. I've got to add on to my shop, so I've got room to store all the pots. They're going to fill this bad boy, and we're just going to make it happen this year. I'm not going to put it off to the beginning of next year, which was kind of my idea. I was like, man, spring of next year will be the perfect time to fire my kiln for the first time, but we're going to make it happen. So this right here is going to dramatically change over the next couple months. As I do more of these vlogs, you're going to see me adding on to my shop. I got to build a little bit of a storage shed. I've got to buy arch brick to finish the arch on this thing. I've got to buy kiln shelves and posts, which is really one of the biggest expenses before I finish this. And then I've got to make a ton of pots to fill this bad boy up. So in the next 7 months, we're going to make every bit of that happen. And come September, sometime in September, I'm going to have my very first kiln opening sale. And so I'm excited about it. I'm a little nervous, but you know what? I'm just going to keep making it happen. The other crazy part of that is I've got commitments to other potters. As I talked about in the beginning, I've got commitments to other potters to make stuff for them just about every single week all the way up until September. Now, I'm going to work around that a little bit and make that happen as well. But it's just going to be a ton of work, and but I'm ready to go. I've decided that this is the time. This is time to make this happen, and I'm excited about it. I appreciate all of you guys, all your support on my YouTube channel. It's really helping out, encouraging me to keep moving forward, and I hope it's encouraging to you guys and teaching you guys some things about the stuff that I've learned in the last 25 years of making pots. And so appreciate you. I'm glad you guys are on this journey with me, because this is going to be really cool to make this happen. And who knows when we'll get it done, but it'll be by September, and we'll be firing this kiln. and we'll be bringing you guys along in video and sharing this journey with you guys. So appreciate you all, and we'll see you soon, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.